Hi, welcome to Infinite Resilience Stories, where we're redefining what it means to be human, one story at a time. My name is Luis Feliz, and I'm your host, and also the guy behind the camera asking all these questions. In this interview, you will have the opportunity to hear the unique life experience of Daniella Isabella. We believe her life is a miracle, just like yours. And as we listen to these stories, our ability to love and honor each other will eventually evolve and perhaps make the world a better place. So if you like this interview, please give it a thumbs up. If you enjoy the channel, please subscribe. And if you have connected with her story, please comment down below. We would love to hear from you. So without further ado, enjoy the interview. Peace out. Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
I appreciate this. Now, we're going to start with, what is your name?
My name is Daniella Isabella Colomias.
Okay, awesome. Where were you born?
I was born in Hollywood, Florida.
Okay. When's your birthday?
My birthday is June 13, 1974.
Okay. Any stories you remember about your birth?
Oh, no. It was, my parents spoke of it as a normal birth. There was nothing, no complications or anything. Nothing strange was ever told.
Yeah. Okay. What's your father's name?
My father's name is Bohdan Hubert Colomias.
Okay. Where was he born?
He was born in what became East Berlin in East Germany, and now is all unified again.
And what year was he born?
He was born in 1946.
Okay. What was his occupation, or is his occupation?
Most of my life he was in hospital management, like the facilities management.
Is he still working?
No, he's retired now.
Okay. What is your mother's name?
My mother's name is Teresa Louise Colomias.
Okay. Where was she born?
She was born in Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay. And what year?
She was born in 1953.
Okay. And what was or is her occupation?
Oh, I don't remember. I'm not in great contact with them, so I don't remember what she does.
Okay. Is there a reason for the lack of contact?
Yes.
Okay. Do you mind sharing?
My mother's kind of abusive. So, growing up, I was taught that's like normal. And everyone I knew, that's how our lives were. So I was like, okay, I guess the problem is me. I don't know how to grow accustomed to living this way. But then, a few years ago, I discovered that the way I was living was not normal and it was not okay. So when I started calling them on this stuff and telling them about it, they really ramped up their abuses toward me. So by that time, I loved myself well enough that I said, I don't want this in my life, no matter who it's from. I cannot have it.
Do you have any siblings?
I have 2 younger sisters.
Okay. What are their names?
Dawn Marie and Catherine Therese.
How's your relationship with them?
I do not have a relationship with them.
Okay. Do you mind sharing why?
Because when I started telling them about codependency and detailing how our interactions were, they jumped on the bandwagon. The whole idea with me growing up was that I was the problem, and they still profess that I'm the problem, even though I'm the one that went to counseling for 20 years. I became sober. Like everything that I've learned, I wanted to share with them because actually love them and care about them, but they did not appreciate it.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Brunswick, Ohio.
Can you describe the house you lived in?
The house I lived in was a single story, 3 bedrooms, bathroom, living room, kitchen. It was kind of a small house. So as we aged and grew up, my parents added an addition onto the back of the house, and that made a lot more space, a lot more living space. The yard was huge. I think they called it an acre of land. Brunswick, Ohio was very rural. It was like going out to Homestead here. There's lots of open space, huge yards. We had apple trees on the property. We had a pond that stretched between several of the people's properties in that road. So it was a really cool place to grow up. I really liked it.
Now, can you describe the games you played as a kid?
Oh, with others or by myself?
Either by yourself, with friends, with family, with your brothers, your sisters?
Oh, my family were very much into board games like Monopoly. There were a bunch of others that I can't think of right now. I was not into board games.
What were you into?
Board games is spelled B-O-A-R-D, but I spelled it B-O-R-E-D, games. I was a very hyperactive child, and they would sit in one place. Like, they played Monopoly for 2 days, like solid. And I was like, I can't sit still that long. I was always outside. I had to go outside. I was very active. I was always riding my bike or doing something outdoors, being in the woods.
If you had to describe your childhood with one word, what would it be?
If I had to describe my childhood in one word, longing?
You mind elaborating? Why?
Because I never felt loved. I never felt wanted. I always felt longing for affection and love and acceptance. And so many things that I just wanted. And I didn't, for some reason I had a problem with English as a kid, or language in general. It was very difficult for me to express what happened in my head. I don't think in words. I think in pictures and emotions and memories. So sometimes translating that into English can be very difficult. And I didn't even recognize that problem with myself until I was in my late 20s. That's when I recognized how to even say that and describe it.
What were you trying to say back then that you couldn't?
That I wanted to be loved, that I didn't feel loved, that I wanted to feel accepted, that I wanted to feel like I belong. I was never treated very well, so I always felt like I was not wanted and that I didn't belong there.
What sort of things did your family celebrate?
We celebrated all the normal stuff, like Christian kind of stuff. Christmas, New Year's, Easter, birthdays. When I was very young, the family get-togethers were massive because my grandmother was one of 10 children. And I think 7 of them lived in that general area. So 7 of them all of their kids and their children's children. So the family, the Italian side of the family was very, very large. So we would have huge Easter dinners and Christmas dinners and things.
Can you describe one typical family gathering?
The ones that I remember probably the most are the Easter ones. The Easter get-togethers were at my grandmother's house. My grandmother's house, I think, was the largest house of everyone that lived in that area. Yeah. She had an upstairs and a downstairs. The downstairs had one room that was just no walls, and it was unfinished, and I think there was a pool table down there. So I remember playing pool with my cousins and sometimes my uncles. And we would run around because like the pool table, the pool table occupied such a small space in that giant room. So there was lots of space to run around and do things. And it was always really interesting. On the other side of that wall was my grandfather's work area. And that's where all of his tools were and some of his projects that he would work on.
What did your grandfather do?
My grandfather was a trucker. He delivered, I think, dairy to some local businesses. Yeah. But he was always working on cars. He was always building something in the backyard. So he was very mechanically inclined, which I always took an interest in.
Yeah. Did you spend a lot of time with your grandfather?
Not as much as I wanted. My grandmother was fairly protective. So she would let me watch him from a distance. Sometimes I could go and watch him in the driveway doing something. I remember him fixing, I think he was doing brakes on an old Nova, like a 1970s Nova. And I could stand there like a few feet behind him and watch what he was doing. But I remember there was one time when he was building a trailer, and she said she didn't want me anywhere near what he was doing, so I had to sit in the house in the kitchen, and I would watch him from the window.
What were your family's attitude towards smoking and alcohol?
Most of them smoked. There were a few that didn't, and they were, of course, antagonistic about it. Alcohol, there were only a few people in my family that drank, and those that did were excessive. So those people were labeled as the problems in the family.
How did that impact or influence you growing up?
As a child, it was just something that I recognized. I did not assign an emotion to it. As I became a teenager, I was curious, about so many things. So I think I tried alcohol, like a beer from my father's fridge, when I was, I think, 12. And it didn't taste all that great. I think I had one sip and I was like, oh, this doesn't taste all that appealing. Why do people do this? And then it wasn't until I was in my mid-teens that I got properly smashed. And then I was like, okay, this is an avenue of escape. This is why people drink, because it's an escape thing. Just like back then I called it taking a vacation from myself. Because by my mid-teens, I had developed all sorts of fears and anxieties, and it just became this daily torture. So having an escape once in a while was beneficial.
What was the discipline like at home?
The discipline was pretty intense. My mother was a very angry person. So if things were not done like exactly the way she wanted or exactly when she wanted, she was very verbally abusive. That was most of what she was verbally and emotionally abusive. She was physically abusive. I don't remember how much. I only remember specific times because of significance, because of how significant they were. I remember the first time she hit me in the face because I was really scared. I did not expect to be hit in the face. And for me, my face is like something, it's really sensitive. Like if I get hit in the head or hit in the face, it like really affects me. So for her to hit me in the face, it really shocked me, and I cried. I don't remember how many times she hit me in the face, but I remember that time, and I remember the last 2 times. In my mid-teens, she would, by this time I was accustomed to her going after my face. So I would put up my hand to block her. And I blocked her those 2 times, and it was at that point I said to myself, okay, this is my life. I have to deal with this angry woman coming after my face when she became angry. I was already accustomed to her yelling and screaming and berating me and all that. But this was another level of like, okay, I have to be on guard all the time.
So by being on guard all the time, or being forced to be on guard all the time, what did you truly want instead of being on guard all the time?
Oh my God. What I really wanted was to be loved, was to be understood, because I thought different and I asked different questions. I was very inquisitive. I wanted to know why all the time. I wanted to understand them. You asked about story. Like, I always asked my parents, especially, what was your life like growing up? You know, how did you come to be this person? I wanted to understand them, and I wanted them to understand me. I wanted them to ask me the same questions in return, so that there would be an understanding. But all they really seemed to desire was combat. They wanted combative exchanges, and that was not what I wanted. I wanted peace. I wanted love. I wanted harmony.
What were they strict about?
They really did not like me being inquisitive. Why are you asking why all the time? Why don't you grow up? Why don't you figure things out yourself? They were fairly strict in religion, and this always baffled me. Like, why do you believe these things? If the Bible was written, I think in 1200, Okay, so we're in the 1980s now. This book is 700 years old. Why do you still follow this book that's so old? Why do you believe in these things so strongly? Why? That's the question I asked the most as a child. Okay, so they were strict about religion. They wanted me to believe what they believed without knowing why. And that was very distressing for me. I required, and I still do, I still require knowing the path of formulation. What is the path of knowledge someone took to get from this point to this? I can dictate very clearly in my life how things happened. And almost now that I have the understanding that I do, I can dictate the path of every event that happened in my life. Why it happened, what was behind it, what my motivation was, what someone else's motivation was. Understanding is key. I don't know how people go through life without having an understanding, a graphic understanding of why. Why is something? Why is my mother the way she is? Why was she so angry? And I had to answer those questions for myself. Why was I angry? And I'm very strict about that. Why? I have to know why. And they would refuse to answer those questions. That I don't know why. I don't really know why, except to say control. Their lack of sharing is how they would control. If I did not understand them, they could control me. Without any knowledge of what was happening, they had control. They were strict in perspectives, the religion. They were very time strict on things. We had to be home by a certain time. We had to be in bed by a certain time. We had to be awake by a certain time. I think that's all. The biggest thing was religion, and that was a very large point of contention between them and I, because I wanted to understand. I cannot just believe something without knowing why. I cannot follow something without knowing why.
Where did you go to school?
I went
from elementary to the highest level.
Okay. I went to, my primary school was called Kidder Elementary. I was there from kindergarten until 6th grade. Was it 6th grade? No, it was 5th grade. From kindergarten until 5th grade, I went to Kidder Elementary. In 6th grade, we moved, I think, 1 mile to the east. So we went to a different school, or I went to a different school for 6th grade, called Crestview Elementary. After that, 7th grade was Edwards Middle School. For 8th grade, we moved, I think, 25 miles north. So then I went to Ford Middle School for 8th grade. And then 9th grade, the high school of that area was Mid Park High School in Middlebrook Heights. And I was there from grade 9 to 12.
Did you have any favorite teachers?
Yes. Yes, I did. there are two that come to mind straight away. Mr. King, I don't know his first name because he was never open about that. Mr. King, everyone thought he was gay, but he was not. He was married, he had kids. He was just a very tranquil, happy individual. He walked with this kind of strut that is the reason everyone thought he was gay. It was like, no straight guy walks like that. But he was just really comfortable with himself, really happy. He was always jovial and joking. And I was like, wow, that guy like seems to like really have his shit together. I only had him for one class, so I didn't know him extremely well, but I just remember like that guy's memorable. The things that he says, the things that he does, that's stuck in my mind. The other teacher I had for several English classes, Tim Peebles. I knew his name because he was very open about it. He did not believe in the sort of hierarchical thing that most people in Ohio believed in. He was willing to learn from students as well as teaching them, which I found very admirable. He was very memorable for that reason. He was willing to learn from someone that was younger than him. He was willing to sit and listen to one of the students speak of something. He was willing to admit when he did not know something. And he was willing to say, you know more than me? Okay, you instruct me. So he was kind of a paranoid person. So he may have had like some, psychological damage, but he was open about it. And he didn't like pretend that it wasn't there. He knew that he was anxious and he knew that people noticed it, but he was still like receptive, and he was not, he didn't try to hide it, and he was very interesting. He knew a lot of stuff, and he had a lot of interesting perspectives.
Were there any teachers you did not like?
Oh, yes. I do not remember. I'll start from the beginning and work forward. There was one lady at my first primary school. I do not recall her name, but she was mean. Holy crap, was she mean. She was kind of tall. I remember her being taller than the rest of the other adults that were around. And she was mean. She was like a dictator. I remember I didn't have her as a teacher for any classes, and I don't really know if she was a teacher, but I remember she was at the school all the time. And she was like a dictator. Just do what I say now. And she had a bunch of catchphrases that I can't really remember right now, but I was like, wow, I do not want to interact with her. There was another teacher called Mrs. Richter. I think she was my math teacher. I remember she blinked a lot because she had contact lenses. It was something that I noticed, and I said, Miss Richter, why do you blink a lot? And she said, it's my contact lenses. Sometimes they get dry, and back in those days, the contact lenses were hard plastic that would sit on the eye. And she was very nervous, and like sometimes would have these displays of anger. And I remember thinking, okay, sorry I asked. Mrs. Lloyd. Mrs. Lloyd was one of my high school English teachers. I had two English teachers in high school. Tim Peebles, who I loved, and Mrs. Lloyd, who, she was another really angry person. Very dictatorish, and I did have to interact with her a lot. And by my high school years, I had become what they call a metalhead. I was very into heavy metal, death metal, just very aggressive styles of music, because that was how I was not permitted to express my anger of my living situation. So the angry music expressed it for me. And I would wear like leather jackets and jean jackets with like the patches on it. I was a typical like 80s stoner. So Mrs. Lloyd took exception to someone like me. So she would belittle me and say, why do you like such evil music? And back in those days, that's what people thought of heavy metal music. They thought it was evil. They thought it was the music of the devil and all this other ridiculousness. But it served a practical function for me. Heavy metal was how I expressed my situation. Mrs. Lloyd did not like that. She took exception to it. She did not like people like me. She thought, we were problem children. So she gave me a lot of shit. And I think she was the last one.
What games or sports did you play at school?
I did not play any sports or extracurricular activities. By that time, I was in the decline of just being very solitary, very antisocial, being very much involved in alcohol and drugs.
What was your first paying job?
My first paying job, I was 16. I worked at a restaurant called Snaps, which they call Rallies now. I don't know if they have those here in Florida. But in Ohio, I think for a couple of years, it was called Snaps, and then it changed to Rallies. I think I worked like 20 or 30 hours per week, something like that during the summer. That was a shit job.
We'll get to that in a moment. From all the jobs that you've had, which one was your favorite?
I have two favorites.
Okay.
The first one was my first kind of computer job after I graduated college.
Where did you go to college? You didn't share the...
Oh.
It was all the way until the highest level of education.
I see. Okay. So let's go back.
Yes, okay. Yeah. So where did you go to school? Your college?
I went to Bryant and Stratton, which is a northeastern college. They started in New York, I think. And they had a campus that was very near my grandmother's house. So it was walking distance away, so I could walk to work. I worked at a Burger King at the time. Mm-hmm. And then I could walk to school. Mm-hmm. And that was from 2000 until 2003.
Okay. Awesome. All right, so now we fast forward.
Right.
Yeah. To your favorite jobs.
Okay, my first favorite job was at Quadex. They were a medical billing company. I started on second shift, running, like babysitting the mainframes, the servers. And the third shift person was moving into a different job within the company. And they said, hey, we're offering this to the people within the company first. Do you want to go on third shift? And I said, yeah, sure. I don't know why third shift appealed to me at the time, but I was like, okay, I'll give it a go and see what I can make of it. I loved that job. I learned so much at that job. It was third shift, so I really didn't interact with anyone a lot. But, and it was not all that intensive a job, so I had a lot of free time. I spent my free time at that job learning and reading. I was paid to sit there and learn and study. And I was like, this is perfect. This is exactly what I want my life to be like. I was paid decent. I was paid enough to live and pay off some bills. And I was paid to study technology. I became really good with JavaScript. And I was really inquisitive on the systems. And there were a few people within the company that would answer my questions that I had. You know, how does this work? Why does that do that? You know, how does something happen? There were some people that were not open like that, and they were not into sharing. But there were people that would answer my questions, and I would just sponge off of them. I loved that. I was very, very happy there. I stayed there 4.5 years. The second job is the job I have right now. Okay. I have what I would consider a dream job. Yeah. I work in a custom Corvette shop, about 20 miles south of here. And it is as cool as it sounds. I've been there, next month will be 1 year. Yeah. And I had a Corvette off its frame. I've unbolted everything that was unboltable from this car. The suspension, the shocks, the engine, the transmission, the seats, the entire interior. I've had this car down to its shell. So it's a cool job. Yeah. It's a really cool job. The cars I get to see on a daily basis are really interesting. Yeah.
That answer brought me back to someone in your life.
Okay. And I know where you're going.
Who was that?
My grandfather. My grandfather, I don't even know how many car models he bought me. And he was willing to answer questions that I had. You know, grandfather, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? You know, he was very keen on answering questions about things I had. He definitely was the one that opened my eyes to physics and the physical world and working with machinery.
Isn't that something? Huh?
And he's like the ultimate tragedy in my life, because when I was 12, he died. I think I was 12, 1985 or 1986, something like that. Right when I was coming into the age that I was forming my personality and my interests, he was gone. And I still wish he were here. I still wish that I would have been in the yard with him, building something. If I could see him again, or if he had stayed.
Yeah, if he's here right now, what would you tell him?
If he were here right now, I would tell him, damn, I miss you. I miss you so bad. Why did all of this happen? Why is my mother the way she is? He was her father. And I just, all the why questions come up. Why was she so crazy? What would you be working on now? What would you be doing? What did you want to do? What did you have planned that you didn't get to?
How would you honor him?
I would honor him by telling the entire world he was probably the most important figure in my young life. He showed me things that I still think about. Every time I work on one of these Corvettes, I remember him building that trailer in the backyard. I'll never forget that. He introduced me to cars. He introduced me into that life, into manipulating machinery, repairing machinery, creating machinery. And I still, even today, I'm 45 years old, I still have a massive fascination with cars, with machinery, with robotics. He didn't have a chance to see some of the automation and the robotics that we have now. That fascinates me.
What have been your least favorite jobs? Or the one? Least favorite job?
The jobs that I disliked the most were the fast food jobs. Because they were kind of like bottom of the totem pole kind of situations. I had several managers at these fast food places that were just as crazy as my mother. And then I have to work for these people. And when I was taking, anger from my mother, I could leave the house. At my job, I was like, I have to stay here and figure out how to deal with this until my, at the end of my shift. And that was terrible because I could never be relaxed. I could never do my job and not worry about something being thrown at me or some sort of physical situation like I had at home.
What did you do in your spare time?
In my spare time, it was all about escape. I was either studying music, practicing, because I started playing drums when I was 7. My parents bought my first drum kit when I was, I think, 16. So I would listen to records and air drum to the music and study these pieces. So music was an escape. Drugs and alcohol were an escape. Riding my bike was an escape. When we lived in Brunswick, it was the rural area, so our road was like the road in that section, and then once our road dead ended, and after the dead end was just this huge section of woods. So we would go back there and just walk around. We would steal beer and go back there and drink. Okay, yeah, spare time was riding my bicycle, drugs, alcohol, music, just anything to get me out of the house. I really did not like being at home. So I would spend as much time as I could outside.
What's your relationship status?
My relationship status, single.
If you had to describe your love life with one word, what would it be?
If I had to describe my love life currently with one word?
Yeah.
Currently?
As a collective up until today.
Oh, messy.
Would you elaborate?
My love life was messy because I was codependent, because I did not understand my motivations. I attracted people that did not understand their motivations. It was just not, it was very abnormal. I would date someone and then be alone for 2 or 3 or 4 years and be like really distraught after the breakup. Because like back then I thought a breakup meant something was wrong with me. You know, I took it like, no one wants me, and I had all these negative thoughts that would run through my mind.
So what has been the biggest lesson you've learned?
What has been the biggest lesson? I need to love myself. First and foremost. The biggest thing, the biggest change, what sobered me in an instant was making the decision to love myself. September 26th and many, many nights before that, 2017, I went to bed smashed just so I could go to sleep. September 27, 2017, I went to bed sober and have every night since.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
What changed on that day?
By that point, I had counseling for many years. I had counseling over about a 20-year period, off and on. And by that point, I had the counseling I had been in for 2 years. Do you want me to tell you the whole story?
It's up to you.
Okay. I knew I was transgender in maybe about 2000. I didn't have those words for it, and I didn't know how to say that. Mm-hmm. But in 2000, I recognized I don't fit into the world as a boy. In 2007, I started performing with this group and in Cleveland, Ohio, and they had 2 people that were transgender. And talking with them and the whole interaction, I'm like, oh my God, did you do this? Did you do this? Like, I was relating our experiences, and I was like, yeah, that's me. I'm transgender. And in 2007, I thought, what do I do with this? Because I don't know how my family will feel about it. I don't know how society at large will react to it. So I hid it. The people that knew me well knew. My family did not know. No one else knew. I didn't tell anyone I worked with or anything. So I just kept it inside. And I tried to do like these feminine expressions that would kind of deal with it temporarily. That was the whole thing. All the drugs and the alcohol and like these like overtly sexual expressions were a temporary fix. So by 2017, I was so at odds with myself internally about this. At my support group, September 27, 2017, I was at my support group. There was a girl there that I had never seen before, never met before. We went out to Rumors afterwards in Wilton Manors to have some drinks and some food. She asked me, how long have you been in transition? Because I've like looked like this essentially for like 15 years. So she asked how long I had been in transition. And I said, well, I've not really started. And her question like rang through my head over and over and over again. Well, over the next hour, I left there. I was sitting in my car, and I thought to myself, Why am I doing this? I hate being alive. I had reached my end. I said, something needs to change. I cannot live like this anymore. So in that moment, I came to full acceptance of being trans, and I committed to the process of transitioning. In that moment, so much of my counseling all fell into place, and the gears all came together, and the wheels started turning in a different direction. I began to love myself, and I said, no matter who does not love me, I still have to love myself. I still have to be honest with myself. I still have to do what makes me happy, even though I will probably take a lot of shit for it. All of the counseling came into place. Making that decision to stop running from myself and stop hiding is how I came to love myself.
Awesome. Now, we're down to the last few questions.
Okay.
Have you ever told yourself there is something wrong here?
My entire life.
If you can recall the first time.
I recall interactions with my mother. When she hit me in the face the first time, I was like, this is not right. I do not like this. And it does not seem right. But everyone around me, this is what our lives were like. My extended family members, friends. Growing up, I had a best friend called Mike. His older brother, his father put him through a wall in the house. And his father was a gigantic dude. He had very large muscles. I remember being terrified of this guy. He put Jim through a wall. Jim is now dead. So cause and effect is stark right there. You put your kids through a wall, they probably will not feel very good about themselves. He died of a heroin overdose. So I knew those things were wrong. I knew those things were not right. But this is what my entire environment was like. Everyone in Ohio, that's what their lives were like. I did not know people could live differently and believe differently and have different experiences until I moved to Florida.
As a result of experiencing that moment when you said there's something wrong here, what did you decide at that moment?
I decided that I needed to know why. You know, why are you hitting me? Why are you so angry? Why? Just all of these why questions. What did you ask again? I've lost my train of thought.
No, that as a result of experiencing that moment where you were like, there's something wrong here with your mother, like, what did you decide at that moment when you said that? When you experienced that and you said that start asking questions like, why is this happening?
I need to know why, and I'm not letting it go.
Okay.
And my mother did not like that. I needed to know why. And the more someone pushes me away from knowing why, then my curiosity increases. Then I'm like, why won't you tell me why? Why are you pushing me away from knowing this information?
At that moment, when you decided, I'm going to ask why, what do you truly want before that moment of something wrong here?
You mean why she hit me, or why the whole situation happened?
No. So the moment that you wondered, asked yourself, there's something wrong here. After that happened, you decided, no, now I gotta know why this stuff is happening. So before that choice, the decision of saying, you know, I want to know why. Like, what did you want before becoming inquisitive about stuff happening, especially that?
I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be wanted. I was always considered a bother. Was just not treated very well. I was always told to go away.
We have one more question before we go through the closing process.
Okay.
Have you ever told yourself, I am on my own?
Yeah.
Can you recall a moment?
The first time I thought that, and this is what really made me want to escape. I was a kid, and I was like, there are all these angry people around me, and I don't know what to do, and I'm fucking terrified. And I am on my own. I'm the only one that's asking questions. I'm the only one that disagrees with what's happening. I'm the only one that feels this way. I'm the only one saying, you people are fucking illogical. And that's when I was like, I feel weird. To make an analogy, I was told basically that 4 + 4 = 10. And everyone else bought into this illusion that 4 + 4 = 10. They just bought into it without knowing why, without being inquisitive. They were just like, okay, 4 + 4 = 10. And I was the only one saying, no, this is not correct. The things that you're saying and doing and thinking and interpreting are not correct. And I don't know why I'm the only one like speaking up about it.
So that moment, when you realize, oh, I think I'm on my own, I'm the only person that sees things this way, what did you decide?
I just became more and more inquisitive. And the more my parents pushed me away from knowledge and information, I was like, just why? Why won't you let me know things? Why will you not share things? I didn't know what to do. They just made me feel weird. They told me there was something wrong with me because I didn't want to just follow along.
So, if your life is a resume up until today, what do you qualify for?
Oh, what do I qualify for? Well, I came up with this phrase that my childhood was a codependency training camp and a narcissist abuse training camp. If someone goes to school for 20 years for something, they know a lot of that particular subject. I know a lot about cars because I've studied them 25 years. I know a lot about computers because I've studied them 12 to 15 years. I know a lot about codependency and narcissistic abuse because that's how I was raised. I even thought about getting a psychology degree because I have so much of this knowledge backing me. So I could qualify for that. I really love cars. even though like it's not a very feminine job. I still love it. I love what I do. I love seeing these cars. I'm chasing after pretty high dollar jobs in that field because I actually have credentials. So I could qualify for those. What I want to do, I have a huge list of things I want to do. I'm a massive shoe fanatic. I love shoes. And I have several of my own ideas that I want to create. That's like my real passion outside of what I'm actually doing.
Okay. Okay. Now, who are you becoming?
I'm becoming me. I'm becoming me unapologetically and uninhibited, unfiltered, just raw. Like this is the person that was hiding in drugs and alcohol and all the fucking dumb shit I did. I'm just letting the person that's in here come out. And I'm not paying attention to others' reactions to it. I'm being real. I'm being honest.
We're going to fast forward 100 years from now. We don't want this to happen, but it's going to happen. That is that we're going to die. What's being said about Daniella in her eulogy?
When I was 15, I think, I told my parents that 100 years from now, no one may know my name. No one may even know I even existed. Now I have a very different view. Now I know there will be people that know my name. All of the people that I interact with, the people at my support groups, the people that I call my chosen family, they will be speaking of me in 100 years. They will remember the things that happened. They will remember how they will remember the drugs and the alcohol and how I came out of that and how I became sober in an instant, just by a choice.
You have time to give your parting words to people, whatever you want to say.
Parting words. Be you. Always. Figure out who you are and love it. Own it and love it. And allow people to have their perceptions of it. But don't let their reactions allow it to dictate something about you, about who you are inside. Love yourself. That's the most important thing. There's no way I would have been able to give up alcohol or cocaine without loving myself. Love yourself. It is so important to love yourself.